In this example, I'm going to take you through a very simple Python program, and I am going to intentionally put some errors in the code so that I can walk you through how to debug and find the errors and correct the errors in your code. So let me just start by typing in some code here. I'm going to do an input statement to get a number. And I'm going to take that ending quote out, even though it put it in automatically for me, because it happens a lot where you'll end up with a missing quote. And then I'm going to take the number and I'm going to add 10 to the number. There we go. Actually, maybe I'll leave that one in there. And then I'm just going to print out the results. Number plus 10 is number. Okay. Now you can see lots of little red marks here. Up in the right-hand corner, there's a red mark with a red circle with an exclamation point. That means there are some serious errors. It tells me there are 13 errors and 2 warnings found in these 3 small lines of code. And the little lines here will map to specific lines of code and gives me an idea what it thinks the errors are. So if I actually try to run the code as it is, I'll just click the little green button. It pops up down here with a specific error message, and it's giving me line 2. It shows line 2 here. It has a little arrow pointing to the end of the line, and it says syntax error EOL while scanning string literal. That means end of line. It found the end of the line while it thought it was looking for, it was scanning a string. So it started here where the quote starts, and it's scanning the string. It got to the end of the line and expected, as you can see as I'm mousing over it, expected to see an ending quote marked, an ending quote mark there. So if I put the quote mark back in, okay, that red line goes away. If I go back and look over here, I went from 13 down to 9 serious errors. I got a weak warning added, and that's the little yellow line here, and we'll get back to that later. Let's try running it again just to see what kind of error messages we get. Now it's skipped down and looking at the 3rd line here. It just says invalid syntax. It can't quite figure out what's going on here. That's a very generic message. So if I mouse over the line, the little red marks, I'm getting some multiple errors here. End of statement expected. In other words, it got to the end and didn't find what it thought it should see. If I look at the first one, it says unresolved inference reference your, and what that means is it thinks your is supposed to be a variable name, and it can't find a variable called your. Well, your is not supposed to be a variable name. It's actually supposed to be text that I'm going to display on the screen. So if I put my quote marks in here, and I'm actually going to capitalize that. I should have capitalized that one. That's a sentence. Now it's telling me that there's a missing closing quote, okay? So now that I put the beginning quote in, it realizes that there should be an ending one, so I'm going to put the ending one right here. Okay, and it says that is, it's still got some errors. You'll notice I've got down to 3 serious errors, and I still have a couple of weak warning and a weak error. I'm just gonna, even though I kind of know what needs to be done here because I see that it's expecting a comma, I just want to see what kind of an error message it gives me. Same error message, just generally invalid syntax, doesn't know what to do with this. So what was happening here is my string is running right into my variable name, and it needs to have those separated by a comma. So let me put a comma in there. Okay, and you'll notice my little marker over here changed from red to yellow. I no longer have any serious errors. I do have some weak errors. So if I run this, it actually will run the program. I'm going to put a number in here. I'm going to say 5, and I'm getting an error again. Now you'll notice this was not a syntax error. In other words, syntax errors occur when Python doesn't understand the code and can't process it. What I'm seeing now is a logic error, which means it's able to run the code, but the code is not running properly when I run it. What it's seeing here is it's finding on the second line, it says type error must be str, which means string, not int, which means integer. Okay, so it's telling me something should be a string, not an integer. Okay, and what it's trying to do is it's trying to add 10 to whatever is in number. Now, if you remember from your textbook, anytime we use the input statement, it's automatically going to give me a string data type. So when it comes here, it's saying this is a string, number is a string. I'm taking that string and I'm trying to use the plus sign, which with a string would be concatenating or putting strings end to end. But that's not really what I want to do. I actually do want to add the value of 10 to it. So I actually want my input to be an integer or a number. So in order to do that, I am going to have to convert somewhere along the line the input of my number and make it an integer. So I'm going to add change here. I'm going to actually, I could do that in a couple different ways. This is one of those examples of how you can do code in different ways. I could put the integer function, surround the input statement with the integer function, or I could do it here on this particular number value. So if I use the integer function, which means int followed by parentheses and the value inside the parentheses, that's going to take the value, convert the string value to an integer, and then I should be able to add 10 to it. Okay? So it's going to take the string that I enter, convert it to an integer, and try to add 10 to it, and let's see if it will run. Okay, so I'm going to type in 5. It was able to run with no errors. It says your number plus 10 is 15. But if I go back up in here and look at my code, it is still got a little yellow box here, and it is still telling me there are 2 weak warnings. You will get points taken off of your program if you submit it with any errors or warnings in your code. So if I look at these specific ones, one says missing white space around operator, the other one says missing white space after comma. So it's being pretty specific, and if I look here, there is a little teeny tiny, hard to see, but there is like a little yellowish underline here. The yellow bar is just where my cursor is. But if I mouse over here, this is where it's looking for the missing white space around operator. I can actually click on this too, and it should take me there. So it actually wants a space between those, and then that marker goes away both here and there. And the same thing here, if I click on this, or if I just go look for the little yellow bar, it says missing white space after, I actually want it to be after the comma. And if I do that, I now have a green check mark, no problems found, all of my code is debugged.